Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Trevor Folgering is a founder of the Metabolic Operating System, or MOS, a metabolic health education and coaching system designed to help men over 40 to improve their metabolism, energy, body composition, recovery, and long-term health. With more than 25 years of experience in health, fitness, nutrition, and coaching, Trevor's work challenges the traditional eat less, move more approach to weight loss. Instead, he teaches men to understand the metabolic signals their body are sending them, including hunger, energy, sleep, stress, cravings, and recovery, and uses those signals to make better decisions about their health. At the heart of Trevor's philosophy is a simple idea. Lasting change doesn't come from fighting your body harder. It comes from understanding how your body is adapting and learning how to work with that. Through the metabolic operating system, Trevor is working to change the conversation around metabolic health for men over 40 and help men build healthier, stronger bodies without relying on extreme diets or unsustainable approaches. Trevor Folgering, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Well, thanks so much, Casey. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm looking
It
forward to
is
the conversation.
Absolutely. It's an honor to host you. You live in Saskatchewan and you don't play hockey. What kind of fake Canadian are you?
I knew you would start with that, but
Come on.
yeah, my son is into hockey. He is such a hockey fanatic and he loves the Maple Leafs, and I'm kind of hooked on hockey. And we have hockey on like in our TV, like playing all winter. So even though I don't play it, I'm still a fan. I still love it.
That's a
Watch all the
start.
games. Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
start. Yeah, I assume that if you threw on skates, even if you haven't ever skated, you would probably pick it right up. It's in your blood. You would be amazing at it. It just happened actually in my home rink where I play every single week. Some kid from Canada showed up. Nobody had ever seen him before. He just like a casual kid, and he was crushing everybody. And we have like semi-professional guys, former semi-professional hockey players that play at that rink, and he was incredible. So
That's
it's
awesome.
it's
Yeah,
it's in the blood.
it's in the
I'm
blood.
glad you're at least interested in the sport. It's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
absolutely, for sure, 100%. It gotta be if you're Canadian, for sure.
That's amazing. Yep, that's awesome. And you're in the or at least your son is a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Toronto, Edmonton. I mean, he likes all the top players, obviously. He's like always very much like, oh, go. It's awesome to see for sure.
That's awesome. So I live here in the Salt Lake Valley, and Utah's never had a real true NHL team. 2 years ago, we acquired the Arizona Coyotes and became the Utah Mammoth over the years, and it's just been absolutely amazing. Last year was the first time I actually got to watch the Toronto Maple Leafs in person in our own home barn and be able to sleep in my own bed at night. It was absolutely a wonderful experience. So
That's a
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
man,
pretty
that's
cool.
amazing. That would be phenomenal, especially in the first NHL team that you guys have hosted. I mean, that's really cool. It's a cool
Yeah,
experience.
it's been
Yeah.
phenomenal for sure. Well, I was so excited to chat with you today, Trevor. Obviously, we mentioned in the introduction, metabolism is an interest of yours. I was even more excited when you logged on to Zoom to start this call, where it actually said your name and it said metabolic specialist. That was my job title for over a decade. Something I really loved doing was measuring and understanding metabolic rate and how we utilize our calories. And so you are an absolute expert in this field, and I'm really, really excited to, kind of chat with you today, chat with you about a few things you've learned in your path. You've been in the health field, like we mentioned, for over 25 years. And so that requires a lot of learning and changing your mind about things and discovering different myths. But yeah, let me hear about your personal story and how you got so interested in metabolism.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my story starts way back in 1998. I decided to become a personal trainer, and I loved exercise because I was really physically active as a kid between 13 and 19. I was like in the kayaking world, we go to nationals and strength training and weight training, and I loved it. I loved the way my body felt when I trained hard. I felt like I had a great workout. And then I was like, man, I want to teach other people how to do this, like how to feel good and lose weight and feel amazing, because that was always my idea, is like I want to get people excited about exercise. So I went to NAIT, which is Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, big mouthful, but it's actually in Edmonton, a province over. So it was a 2-year degree there, and I studied really hard. It was really great. I had fun and met a lot of different people and learned a lot about obviously the body, exercise physiology, anatomy, lifestyle consulting and all that kind of stuff. And after just started working in gyms and, started to really learn about the human body. And, it's been a 25-year journey. It's not something that, I've done a weekend course and then like, yes, I'm a professional. I love this field. I love helping people. I enjoy the actual change that somebody actually gets within their body, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It's such an awakening when somebody says, wow, I understand this now. I understand how to change my body, which is what obviously we're going to get into in a few moments. But my journey from there, basically 14 plus years as a personal trainer, working in various clubs, gyms, private studios. I owned my own business one time as a personal trainer, as a, driving around to people's houses and, doing that kind of stuff, mobile trainer. And then in 2014, I just had a revelation. I was like, you know what? It was seemed to me that I was spending my time, like I had an hour with each client. I was spending the first 20 minutes talking about nutrition with my clients. Like it was literally like I would have them write down their food and I would go through it and we wouldn't touch the weights or cardio or anything for a good 20, 30 minutes. And I'm like, wait a second, like there's something interesting here. I love talking about nutrition rather than training my clients, right? And so it was a natural progression for me to be like, okay, I'm going to go into nutritional consulting. I want to be a nutritionist. I want to look at this as my next career move because, with a personal training, you're only with that client for 1 hour, right? But then there's 23 hours that client has by himself or herself, right? So a lot of things can go wrong. Nutrition, stress management, sleep may be off, so it's very hard as a personal trainer to control your client's overall lifestyle, variables in just 1 hour. And so I thought, well, what if I just change my perspective and could help clients in a lot of different ways, including nutrition? And obviously, we all have teeth for a reason. We all eat, right? And so that was my next career move. And I took my knowledge and started to learn more about nutrition and really dove into it, going down the rabbit hole, so to speak, and really started to learn about hormones and how our bodies are affected by what we eat and calories and all that kind of stuff. And that was a really revolution from 2014 up to 2018. And I was only doing this part-time because I hadn't really opened up my business yet. And I was just working with a few select clients here and there and not really, 100% full-time. And then in 2018, I made the switch into full-time. And what was really fascinating for me anyway, was the ketogenic lifestyle. And I started to dabble in the ketogenic lifestyle probably about 2014, 15, and had amazing results, like just phenomenal results. And I know that, with your reader or your listeners here, they can't see anything, but maybe I could put my before and after photo up but I made a huge transformation from 2015 to 2016, losing over, it was like close to 36 pounds or 35 pounds of body fat. Went from like 232 down to 193, completely like super lean. And I was like, man, this is phenomenal. I feel great. I have great energy. It's amazing. And so I created a company called the Keto Solution in 2018 and opened up a full-time practice. And I was like, okay, I want to teach people about the ketogenic lifestyle because there is a lot of misinformation about the ketogenic lifestyle. Like, when a lot of people think keto, they think butter and bacon, right? I'm just going to eat the copious amounts of butter and bacon, right? And that's not obviously the way it works. And it's obviously very unhealthy for the body doing it that way. So I taught people the right way to essentially fuel their body with a ketogenic lifestyle. And I don't specifically use diet because it's not a diet. It's something like for myself personally, I've followed ketogenic lifestyles since 2015. So like over, what is that, 11 years? But there's variances to the ketogenic lifestyle. Like it's not something that, you have to take lightly. It's something that it does become a lifestyle. And so I have incorporated that into my own lifestyle and taught other men and women over 40 how to do the same. As I progressed in my career, I noticed a couple things. One, the ketogenic lifestyle is very, very powerful. It is like a very powerful tool, but it is only a tool. That is exactly what I teach in my system, the metabolic operating system. The ketogenic lifestyle and any other type of quote unquote diet are just tools in the toolbox, right? And most people, when they look at how to lose weight, they are only getting a piece of the puzzle, right? A tool. They're getting maybe a supplement or a diet, or maybe they're getting, I don't know, a workout program or something like that, where it's just a piece of the puzzle, right? And this is where my philosophy has completely changed over 2, 3, 4 years, is that the problem with the weight loss industry, and I'm not saying that this is sort of a generic blanket, but the problem is, Casey, is that we've all been given just little pieces of the puzzle, right? So imagine, for example, you take your family to Disneyland. I don't know if you've ever been to Disneyland before. I don't know, or Disney. We can say Disney World or Disneyland, right? Let's say somebody hands you a map, right? So the map is essentially a map. It looks like a good map. It's got like the roads and the cities and everything's there. So you start driving to Disneyland, but then you realize you only have half the map. So the question becomes, could you make it to Disneyland? Yeah, maybe not. Maybe it takes you more time. Maybe you're more frustrated. Maybe you get in an argument with your spouse about which way to drive, right? So that the equivalent is that we've only got pieces of the map, right? And that's where people have got really frustrated because everyone says, okay, we've got to focus on calories in versus calories out. No, it's about insulin resistance. No, it's about supplements. No, it's about dieting. No, it's about exercise, right? None of these are inherently wrong, but the problem is they're only pieces of the map. That's it, right? So the problem becomes if you just try one piece and you don't experience the entire map, are you going to get the weight loss and health results that you truly desire and deserve? Probably not, right? You might get little bits of, you might get like some results, like 10, 20 pounds off, but because we're only trying little bits and pieces of the map, your metabolism doesn't respond as it should, and you start to gain the weight back. And this is where the next evolution of my thinking has come, because it's not about keto and it's not about exercise. It's actually creating an entire map so that your metabolism responds better. It responds stronger. And that's the key. That's the difference, right? So it's not about, and I noticed this in our nutritional weight loss industry, is that we all fight amongst each other, right? Everyone's like, no, it's my way. No, it's my way. No, it's his way. No, it's this way, right? That's not how it should be. It's all of our ways, but we should put them all together for a cohesive map. So anybody can follow that map and get to quote unquote Disneyland. That's the goal, right? And so that's why I created the metabolic operating system, not as another diet, but as something that somebody can follow that has the complete map, right? So that's what been my kind of the trajectory. It's been 25 years, and I think this is almost like the pinnacle of my career where I kind of figured it out. Not that I have, like I've not figured everything out, but I think for this part of my journey, I feel like very, very confident that this is exactly what people need in order for them to transform their bodies for life, not just for 3 months, but for life. Because what I noticed in my other programs, like I ran another program called Biohack the Fat, and that program was phenomenal. You know, I could help people lose 30 to 50 pounds. I had people call me the ab whisperer because I could get people to get their abs, you know. But as soon as they stopped the program, they gained the weight back, right? And I'm like, why? And that left me so frustrated and upset as a nutritional health specialist or as a metabolic health specialist because I was like, well, that makes no absolute sense. Why would somebody push their body 100%, get the results they want, and then let it go theoretically and gain weight? Right. And that took me a long time to understand because I was like, well, the program works. Why wouldn't somebody be able to keep going? Well, because it's only part of the map, right? It's not the complete map. That's why, right? We're missing other pieces that stop the body from responding properly.
Got it. Well, it's good that you focus on people older than 40 because people younger than 40 are like getting a map. What the hell are you talking about? Like, yeah, we had to go get paper maps or type in MapQuest to get routes. So that was a thing. It's really funny that you mentioned the butter and the bacon thing. Everybody kind of has that idea. And literally, you know, I've coached keto since about 2018. I've never had one person ever mention that was their diet. Like you can include those in your diet if you want, but that's not the bulk of the diet. So it is funny how the word, you know, the keto diet gets that kind of rap of like, oh, we're just going to melt sticks of butter. Like nobody's melting sticks of butter on this diet. They're getting themselves in ketosis, which is, it's kind of a cool thing because a ketogenic diet is the only diet you can validate by markers. You can't do that with a cabbage soup diet or a Mediterranean diet or calories in, calories out. There's rough tools that you can use, but a ketogenic diet, if you really truly want to know, there are biological markers that can tell you whether you're in a state of ketosis or not. And that way, like you said, like there's many different ways that you can get there. You could be vegan, you could be vegetarian, you could be like me and be carnivore, you could do fasting. Like there's so many different ways that you could get into that state and experience some of those benefits. And like you said, have that be one of the tools that you do. I have to ask, I mean, 2014, 2015, I don't recall seeing the word keto on magazines at the grocery store back then. How did you even learn about the ketogenic diet? It wasn't exactly mainstream back then.
Yeah, it wasn't. And you know, the funny thing about that is I learned it through an actual MLM company called Prove It. I don't know if you heard of Prove It.
Remember them? Yeah.
Yeah, exogenous ketones. So I had a friend basically say, man, you can get into ketosis in like 60 minutes. You just drink this drink and you start burning fat. And I'm like, okay. And so like I took it and like you know, pee on a stick, and of course you see ketones jump up, right? And I'm like, holy shit, this is crazy. Like, okay. So I joined that company basically around that time, 2014, 15. And obviously, they talked about ketosis and the ketogenic diet. And from there, I was like really interested. I was like, hey, this is really cool. And ironically, Casey, I have been on and off a ketogenic diet since 2000, 2001, because I was a competitive bodybuilder, right? And so back then, I mean, obviously when you compete, you got to get super lean, right? And so I inherently did a ketogenic way of eating and not even really knowing it, right? Like I would do, like tuna and spinach and, all my fats and everything there, for like 6, 7, 8 weeks. I ate tuna like 2 cans a day every, with my, vegetables and everything and my fats, every 2 hours, right? So, and I love oils. That was my big thing back then too. I love Udo's oil and extra virgin olive oil and all the extra, all the exogenous oils. So I was inadvertently doing it back then, and I didn't even realize what I was doing. I didn't even realize it was keto. So back in 2014, 15, I started to research what the ketogenic diet actually was and started to go like dig deeper into it. And I realized, yeah, I was doing that. And then through the conversations of our marketing or the MLM program, I realized that, hey, you actually can't get your body into ketosis or nutritional ketosis via a supplement. You can't. I mean, it's just theoretically impossible. Physiologically, it doesn't work like that, right? So I got really turned off by the marketing company or the MLM company because of the fact that they were promoting this exogenous supplement as the, the be all and end all of, getting your body into nutritional ketosis. And I always say nutritional ketosis because that's what we do, right? You eat foods, nutrition to drive your body into nutritional ketosis. You don't take a supplement. And so then I started to get more heavy into it when I realized that's exactly what I needed to do. So around 2015, that's when I started to really push higher fats, moderate protein, low carb. I would measure my ketones on a pee strip, but then I realized that's not the correct way to do it because your body obviously dumps out excess ketones as you get adapted, right? As you get keto adapted. And so I would then start testing on my blood on man, this is giving me chills because I'm just thinking about this. I'm like, oh yeah, this is fun because this is exploring, right? For me, I love data, right? So I always would prick my finger, get blood, test my ketones, right? And I would get really into it. I'm like, why are my ketones only at 0.3? Like, what the heck's going on, right? And I would consult other people, and I realized my protein was too high, hey, because my body can really quickly turn over protein into glucose. And then I started lowering protein. I thought, okay, what is the correct amount of protein that I need? And I realized that 0.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is really the cutoff for a lot of people and for myself personally. So I would actually have, it's under 100 grams of protein for myself. I would have about 80 to 90 grams of protein max, and which would bolster ketones up quite a bit because my body wasn't able to convert over the amino acids into glucose via gluconeogenesis. And so that was the start. And then I started to get my ketones, and I'm like, yeah, 0.8, 0.9, 1.2, 1.5, and then I started incorporating like more intermittent fasting, like doing like 3 meals a day spaced 4 hours apart and then fasting for 16 hours. Start doing the 24-hour fasting, starting to do like longer fasting, getting my body in. The longest fast I've ever done is about 120 hours, about 5 days, which is, pretty intense. But that was the start of it, kind of digging in and just learning. And it was like self-experimentation. I always tell my clients, like, bring me the data, not the drama, right? Give me the numbers so I can see what's happening internally inside your body. And therefore, I can actually make a proper assessment of what's happening and we can make changes. That's what I did with my own body, right? I took the data that I was given from my own blood meter. I made changes. I changed things, and eventually felt like I felt like I really dialed in the nutrition.
Wow, that's amazing. It is so transformative once you discover that about, being in a state of ketosis, whether you choose to do a long-term diet or not. Just having that as a tool in the tool belt is so powerful. So absolutely love that. The protein thing that you mentioned is really interesting. That's a much lower threshold than what most people would say. And a lot of people would say that on that amount of protein, you would be losing muscle mass. Now, I'm not sure if you had any kind of a tool, like a scale or something to verify that. But for you personally, in your own experience, and I'll expand that to say the experience of people that you've helped take through ketosis, have you noticed any muscle loss whatsoever, any lean mass loss for anybody that's tried a ketogenic diet, even if they're not hitting the number that a lot of people say as far as protein intake? You need 1 gram per pound of lean mass or whatever you want to say per day, ideal body weight, however you want to phrase it. Like, did you notice any muscle loss when you were eating a reduced amount of protein?
No, I didn't. And one of the things, and this is actually a really interesting conversation because there's going to be a lot of people that say, what the heck? You cannot survive with 80 grams of protein when you're training. But one of the things you have to realize is that your body is producing ketones, which are muscle sparing, right? So one of the things we have to realize is that ketones, by nature, when they actually get developed, are muscle sparing. So you don't need to have as much protein as you typically need on a non-ketogenic way of eating. That being said, if you are very aggressive with your caloric deficit plus reducing protein, there is a definite yes to losing muscle mass. Now, my system, we did not do more than like 15 to 20% caloric deficit. So my clients rarely saw muscle loss because their ketones created an elevated state where their body did not need to utilize muscle in order for that energy to become abundant, right? We got that from our ketones, right? Ketones can provide the body with copious amounts of energy, right? Probably like 3 times the amount of energy that glucose can. So that was the goal. And so I rarely, a client never really complained about losing muscle, so to speak. Now, myself personally, I have experienced that. Back last year, before I changed my entire philosophy, I was doing 3 24-hour fasts a week, right? So basically, I would do it 3 times 4. So I'd eat 3 meals a day, spaced 4 hours apart, fast for 16 hours, fast for 24 hours, reload on the meals, fast for another 24 hours, reload on the meals, fast for another 24 hours. Yes, I did lose muscle mass there. Very much an experimentation. Like I said, I'm really much on an experimentation basis on myself before I try it with anybody else. So I can definitely say yes, because my caloric intake over the week was less than what my body actually needed. So of course it was going to probably more than likely rip into some muscle mass. Now, funny enough, I do have data on that. I don't think I have it like saved anywhere, but I did lose. But then when I reversed it, I could actually see the muscle coming back up. I gained like 9 pounds of muscle in like a 1.5 month period or something after the rebound, after I stopped, doing the 3 times 24-hour fast. So your body can adapt and rebound really quickly. But yes, in certain situations, you can lose muscle mass, but normally in normal situations and normal metabolic situations, muscle mass loss is very minimal, extremely minimal. And you can actually gain muscle on a ketogenic way of eating. A lot of people say you can't, but you definitely can.
You definitely can. Yeah, absolutely. I found low carbohydrate and ketogenic diets from 2 different ways. The first way was weight loss contests that we were supposed to do with our clients, and the way we were doing them was calories in, calories out. We would give mixed meals and balanced meals and blah blah blah, and it would not work. Nobody would ever lose weight. Nobody would ever sustain the weight loss. If they lost fat, they also lost lean mass, and never worked. When we discovered a ketogenic diet and started giving people just simple keto meals, by measuring muscle mass and fat mass for a really long time, I measured that the cohort of people that we were taking through, we had over 150 people that we took through. They lost a total of 732 pounds, I want to say, and 98% of that was fat, validated by a really good quality body fat scale. Like, this is amazing. Like, they say you can't do this. So that was the first thing, is I noticed exactly the same thing that you mentioned. You try a ketogenic diet, you do not lose muscle mass, even if you're reducing your protein. I never, ever, ever, ever see it. The second thing that brought me to that, like I said, is I worked on metabolic carts for a really long time, and we've known for forever that if somebody did a calorie restricted diet and they were doing a lot of calorie burning on the other end, they were, exercising a lot, they would reduce their metabolic rate. And I would expect, their metabolism, just innate, whatever they needed to be resting, their calorie burn to be reduced. And what I noticed with people who are doing ketogenic diets, really low carbohydrate, high fat diets, and they were combining it with some form of fasting, their metabolic rates were raising. They were going up, not
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Even if they weren't eating what I told them was the required amount of calories, because they were so satiated all the time. I couldn't figure it out. Like, why is one group eating less calories losing their metabolic rate, and this other group who is eating, and they're just eating different things, their metabolic rate is higher? Is that something that you've noticed as well, that people can experience a greater rate of calorie burn?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And comes back to like calories in versus calories out is not the correct way to look at it, right? Because you notice it's actually the ratio of fats and proteins that actually increase your metabolic burn, right? It's not calories in, calories out. You can actually have a better chance of losing body fat and increasing muscle mass and increasing your metabolic rate if you actually increase fat intake. That is the key. I found so much my fat intake between when I was starting this 2018 to 2024, I would push my fats up to like 85% of my total caloric intake. It was so high. It was ridiculously high. And I felt freaking amazing. Like it was like my energy levels were like through the roof. I was sleeping like a baby, felt great, got up at 4 in the morning, did lots of stuff, trained twice a day. Like it was magical. And I'm like, wow, that's the secret, right? So not so much calories. You can keep a low caloric intake, but it's the ratio of macros from your proteins and your fats that make the biggest difference. And that's how our biohack fat system worked really well, is because our fat ratio started pretty high. It was like 77% fats at the beginning, but we drove it up to 85% of fats in around week 5. And then we added in the fasting on top of that. And it was just like magic. The body fat was just like, shoo, like would just literally melt off the client. It was like, frig, this is cool.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. It was really
Yeah.
awesome.
You mentioned people fighting about diets, and if there's one thing that a lot of people, even in the low carbohydrate space, fight on about diet is the fat to protein ratio. So it's really exciting and interesting that you made this your personal experiment and you found that a higher amount of fat worked really, really well for you, at least for a time. So people who are out there questioning, are you getting too much protein, not enough protein, the fat, like play with this yourself, like see what works best for you. Take your approach, like you said, and just experiment with yourself and see what's best, because you may find a real sweet spot there. And it may be a little bit unexpected, and it may be a little bit different than whoever influencer you're following is saying you have to get to this level of protein and or fat and what the ratio has to be.
Yeah, I think it's really smart, for most people just to do some self-experimentation and just say, okay, listen, I'm not going to follow the typical weight loss dogma, right? Because that's what we always listen to, like, oh, we got to fast now. And then somebody says, don't fast. And then somebody says high protein. And it's about what works for your body, because everybody's biology is a slightly different and reacts a little bit differently to whatever you're putting into it. So I always say, like, hey, listen, if you feel like you need to actually self-experiment, do it. Like I self-experimented with 4 meals a day, right? Which is not the typical way of losing body fat, right? People say, well, you got to do 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day. I start my clients usually on 4 meals a day, spaced 4 hours apart. That's something you don't really hear a lot in the weight loss space or the health space or the nutrition space. It's different because physiologically, our bodies need to become metabolically stable. By eating every 4 hours, we allow the body to become stable, metabolically stable, which enhances the metabolism, right? And so the opposite end is sometimes if you eat 1 or 2 meals a day and you're restricting your calories, and then you're going on, like, say, an hour treadmill or whatever, you're going to the gym, that creates metabolic instability or dysfunction because you're creating more of a unstable environment within your body. So there's a lot of nuances to this, but it's really what I really like is that the nutritional space, you have to listen to your body. Listen what works, right? Don't follow everybody else just because they say 2 meals a day, or don't even follow me because, 4 meals a day may not work for you. If it does, that's phenomenal. I think it's really the magic number, but it should be working for you, not some influencer that says, hey, you should be eating 2 meals a day just because I say so,
Yeah.
right?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So on that note, there's a concept out there in particular with the carnivore diet called priming, where they recommend if you're going to try to do a carnivore diet, this would, branch out into also doing like a ketogenic diet, I'm sure. But basically, it's like you're supposed to eat at least 3 meals a day, every single day. And what they find that happens is you're almost overnourishing somebody, which again is going to raise their metabolic rate. They're going to start to burn more calories all the time as they're getting that signal that food is safe and we've got plenty of it and it's all coming in. I can, have plenty of energy to have, good brain energy. My nails grow well, my hair grows well, like all the things that can like, kind of reduce when you reduce your metabolic rate. Do you find that? Let me rephrase the question. How long do you find that people eating 4 meals a day are like getting really, really full and asking like, can I do three? Can I step this down? Can I do two? Or do you find that people can maintain as long as they break it down into small enough meals and continue eating 4 times a day?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I honestly think this can be a 4 meal a day, can be, or priming, which I've never heard about, but that actually makes complete sense, can be a sustainable way of life for the remainder of your life, right? Because what you're teaching your body is consistency, right? So your body loves being in homeostasis, right? Balance, right? That really is the key of the whole body, is to stay within a homeostatic balance, right? So by eating every 4 hours, we're teaching the body to stay within a homeostatic balance of meal timing, meal rhythm. And it allows the body to function at a very high level. Like you mentioned, like everything starts to work properly again. You have great energy, you sleep well, you have great, your cognitive functions are there. So by eating the proper ratios of fats and proteins every 4 hours, that's what happens. So yeah, I love the fact that you're priming the body for that. It's consistency. What I like is just the consistency in the meal timing. It creates that rhythm. Your body loves meal timing rhythm. That's the goal. And that's what really sets the body up for fat loss long term, right? So we're not forcing the body through a tight caloric restriction. We're actually allowing the body or gaining some metabolic, I call it metabolic trust. You're building trust within your body by giving it the proper nutrients every 4 hours. And that is such a wonderful thing. And that's why I think, eating 4 meals a day, if it works for you, that's phenomenal. That's something I would definitely look at and experiment with within your own biology.
Got it. And so, okay, that's cool that you can do that long term. Do you like what you've noticed with your clients? Like you're still able to do 4 meals a day. Do you notice with your clients, like do a majority of them want to move to lesser number of meals a day, or are people ending up pretty fine on 4 meals a day?
Yeah, so it's this split. I would say some people are not used to it, so it takes a little while to get them metabolically adapted to 4 meals a day. Not many people are used to eating, 3 meals a day. So just asking them to go to 4 meals a day sometimes is a bit of a stretch. So obviously a little bit of consulting and coaching around that definitely gets them over the hump. And then it's how your body adapts, right? So we in our system, what we do is we have different meal types or different meal structures, right? And so these aren't typical like big 4 meals a day. They're like, so for example, the first meal of the day is a fat forward meal. So this is where you can see fat liberally in the meal, right? Because that obviously sets your day up. Right? We want to make sure that we have liberal amounts of fats, right? The next meal is more energy supporting, so more like increasing your protein, slightly decreasing your fats. The third meal is a little less structured, but it still creates a forward momentum when it comes to fats. And then the last meal of the day is a little bit less, where it's structured, but not as huge as the first meal. So having it structured this way is really advantageous because people can just sit on this 4x4 meal timing system for a long time. Now, if somebody's really wanting to push forward, we actually switch them into our 3x4 system, which is essentially 3 meals a day, spaced 4 hours apart with a 16-hour fast. And many, many people love that. Like I would say 90% of our clients are on that. They enjoy it because it just allows them to take a break, have a 16-hour break from eating. They get to obviously experience, a little bit more of a ketogenic effect through that process of fasting. And I would say, yeah, most people switch over after between 30 to 60 days between the 4x4 to the 3x4.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Do you get many people like me who have done, carnivore for a long time and they're already on like 2 meals a day?
Yeah, actually,
You.
I mean, not super structured. Be not like, oh, I'm eating exactly this amount of protein and these and 2 meals a day at this time and this time. But I do have a lot of my clients, past clients, who have come to me and said, Trevor, I'm not used to eating like 4 meals. I eat 2 meals a day. They're very inconsistent. Like sometimes I eat at 11, sometimes I eat at 1, then I eat at 6, and then sometimes I eat at 7. Right. So that's where I break it down and say, okay, well, we're going to have a structure in place in terms of your meal rhythm because that's the first place to start. But I do have a lot of people. I've had a lot of clients actually on the carnivore diet and say, okay, it doesn't really work for me anymore. I need to try something different, right? And then that's where we break it up and say, okay, we're not going to fast anymore for 18 hours or 20 hours, right? Because obviously it's not working for you. It's creating metabolic instability. So we're going to go to 4 meals a day, create some metabolic stability, and then we're going to start, kind of paring it down to 3 meals a day. And through that process, we see how the body responds through metabolic signaling. So this is another part that's so important. Our bodies are always communicating with us, right? So your body is communicating with you right now through hunger signals, craving signals, digestion signals, sleep signals, stress signals, recovery signals, and also fasting glucose signals. And so we track all of that through our entire program because what we want to see is how your body responds to this actual meal timing rhythm, right? So the really cool thing is, you could, and I always like data, right? So I'm like, don't fly blind. Let's see how your body responds. So let's figure out what your signals are. And then if your metabolic signals are really strong, great. Let's continue. If they're not, let's investigate and let's see why, right? I like to call our clients metabolic detectives, right? They have like the what do they call magnifying glass and they're looking and they're like, okay, what's going on in my body? That's what I like because then you put a little bit more onus on the client to be like, man, why do I have low energy levels? What's going on? What did I do yesterday? They become more of a detective and they become more invested in their body. I think that is so important because as coaches, we have a lot of onus on us to help our clients. And I love helping clients, don't get me wrong, but I want my clients to be more of a I want them to invest in themselves in terms of like figuring out what goes on inside their body so that they don't need me after, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, right? They can do it on their own. They know how to change things. They know how to, change their bodies very easily, right? Because they've been taught how to do it.
I love that approach. That's amazing. I kind of parked a question, a personal question I wanted to ask you about your experience earlier. To kind of set that up, I started a carnivore diet in April of 2019 was my first. I really enjoyed how I was feeling. My hunger was less. I was able to maintain muscle mass. I lost fat, all the things that people talk about. I really quickly settled into only eating ribeyes, and I was only eating once a day. I did the OMAD that everybody talks about. It was easy for me to eat at 7 or 8 p.m. I'd have about a pound and a half of ribeye. That would be my food forever. And it was about a year and a half that it's just, I was not feeling right. And I noticed benefit from adding more food, more meals during my day. I didn't get up to four, but I certainly had more than one every single day. So all of that to say, with your experience, you had that time when you were doing those 24-hour fasts in between, your eating days. Do you think you were over fasting and that was the reason why you were losing muscle mass as well? Like, were you so lean that you were maybe doing too many of the fasts?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I believe that is to be the case, right? So, it's interesting that you brought up carnivore and that you had that experience because for myself, I did try carnivore as well, and I didn't feel good on it. Like I don't know. My body didn't respond well. I love vegetables. I love avocados. I like crunchy stuff. I like, having like volume in the meal. I like fats. I like, all that stuff, right? And when I took away all that, my body was like, nah, no, it's not good. So, interesting that you said that because, I think carnivores there is a place in the world for carnivore. I don't think it's a bad way of eating. I honestly think it is actually really good for a lot of people. Obviously, lots of people have gotten great results from it, but it can cause some metabolic dysfunction, I believe. And I think that's probably what you experienced through a process of, doing it for a longer extended period of time, not just like 2 or 3 months, but over a year or so. Your body was like, yeah, this is not right anymore, right? So intuitively you felt that, right? And you started to increase your meal frequency, changing things up, and then your body started to respond, right? I always say that our bodies respond to the environment that we give it, right? So if you create an environment, a carnivore environment, your body's going to respond to that carnivore environment until it doesn't want to anymore, and then it's going to rebel, right? Much like a teenager, right? I don't know if you have teenagers at home, Casey, but I know I have a 12-year-old at home, so he's become a little bit more rebellious. But if I tell my 12-year-old, hey, you got to be at home at like 6 p.m., you're not going to see your friends after 6 ever. He's going to rebel. He's going to be like, screw you, dad, and he's going to stay till it's like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. The body's like the same way, right? The body doesn't like to be restricted in a certain fashion, whether that's calories, protein, fats, right? That's why I feel like 4x4 is such a great system because we're not restricting, we're not telling the body it can't have anything. That carnivore way can be really restrictive for the body over a longer period of time. Now, that's not saying that everybody has that exact same experience, but over time, it can lead to a little bit of metabolic instability, which you felt, and then you're like, man, this is not what I need to do anymore. And you felt that, then you made the change.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love that. I think that's totally reasonable. I think you'll be very happy to know I am working so hard to keep the price of vegetables down by not buying any of them so that I'm saving you a bit of money. I'm not driving up the price at all. So
Yeah,
hopefully that saves
that helps.
saves you. You're welcome. One more kind of nutrition question before we move on. The four meals, you mentioned the meals are different, which I appreciate. I really like that. That was going to be one of my questions. Is there an ideal time if somebody did want to do a higher bolus of carbohydrate? Some people say you're more insulin sensitive in the morning. Other people say it's better for sleep if you do it at night. Is there one of those meals that it's better to have a higher amount of carbohydrates if somebody's going to do it?
Everybody is a little bit different in terms of carbohydrates and insulin sensitivity, right? We have to look at how the body responds to that carbohydrate load. Again, it kind of boils down to metabolic flexibility, right? So what I mean by that is how does your body adapt to carbs, right? So like, for example, you could have somebody with a high insulin sensitivity and they could utilize carbs all day long, right? You could be like insulin resistant and you can't have any carbs. For me personally, carbs don't work really well for my body, probably because I trained my body not to utilize carbs very efficiently. But I don't feel good when I have carbs. I don't feel good when I have oatmeal, potatoes, rice, etc. So my drug of choice, I guess, is fats. I get my energy through fats. But in terms of When is the best time to take them? I'm 100% in the morning. If you can, get something in the morning, like if you want, say, a bowl of oatmeal with your eggs, fair enough, right? Your body has enough time to take that glucose, utilize it efficiently, right? I would say after a workout, obviously, you're way more insulin sensitive after a workout, so having like, your carbs, your rice, your potatoes, whatever you want after workout, fair enough, that's cool. I would not try to have carbs at nighttime unless you know your body so well that you know that your body's going to utilize that glucose really efficiently. That's the whole name of the game, is glucose control. We have to control glucose. The metabolic marker that we focus on the most in our program is glucose. We want stability in our glucose. We do not want to see our glucose go up and down, up and down, up and down throughout the day, or even throughout the week, right? We want to see the pattern of glucose control, meaning your glucose still stays stable, whether it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Sunday, right? That's a metabolic marker that is probably one of the most important markers to keep track of. Not because we want to see if you're diabetic or not, but because we want to see metabolic stability. That is the key. So carbs can cause a little bit of metabolic instability if your body is not able to utilize that glucose properly,
Well
right?
said.
Does that make sense? I don't know if I answered that
Makes perfect
question.
sense. Yeah,
Okay.
no, that makes perfect sense. It's interesting too. Like I've played with adding in carbohydrates many times, even on a very low carbohydrate diet. Like before hockey games, for example, I would think that like, what am I missing out on? I must have less energy because I'm, maybe in a fasted state or I'm not eating carbohydrates, and I eat them and I'm just like, I just feel hungry now. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
really make that big of a difference once you're fat
Yeah.
adapted. So that's a wonderful answer. I think it's really nuanced, and that kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
And so I just want to add one more thing there. And I actually, it's interesting that you were talking about carbs before workout, because like, I'm an endurance athlete and I can do like 21.1 kilometers without any food in my body. I just give me a black coffee and some water, electrolytes, and I'm good to go, right? The adaptation is wonderful, right? So there, like I always think of like carbs are really non-essential, right? Like, we've been taught in our society that we need carbs, right? You need to have, your big bowl of oatmeal before you go and play a sport or whatever, but you don't. If you're fueling your body correctly with the right macronutrients, you should be able to become fat adapted, where your body utilizes your own stored fat for that activity. That's why we have body fat. We have body fat so we can use it, right? And though that's something that carbohydrates obviously will stop, because carbs raise insulin levels. Obviously, they block the body from utilizing stored fat. High levels of insulin cause hyperinsulinemia, so higher levels of insulin circulating in the bloodstream causes a whole bunch of different issues in the body. That's what we want to stop, right? So carbs, iffy if you are not insulin sensitive, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And one thing I like to point out when somebody challenges me on that, or they say like, "Oh, these athletes are eating, hundreds of calories of carbohydrates every hour when they're on the bike and they're competing in the Tour de France and all this stuff." It's like, well, yeah, they're competing in the Tour de France. They don't care about all of the other benefits of ketosis. Like, I love to play hockey and perform well, but that's not my primary mission in life. Unfortunately, the Utah Mammoth are not calling me this off season. Unfortunately, I
Yeah.
want good brain energy. I want good, good mood. Like there's so many different things, yeah, that you get from that you get that benefit as well. So I appreciate that answer. I wanted to touch on exercise. How do you help people understand what is the proper way to do their exercise that helps support their metabolism? You hear a lot about like what you just mentioned with endurance sport and how you're burning such a high amount of calories that can have a metabolic lowering effect. How do you help people understand like what is the best kind of exercise for them to help support their metabolism?
Yeah, this is also another great question, because exercise has been touted as the way to actually lose body fat and improve your health. And to be honest with you, exercise is a stress on the body if handled incorrectly, right? So think about like what you do, and if you're, for example, like myself, if I'm an endurance athlete, if I just go and run a 15 kilometer, or I go and like, do a lot of endurance stuff, and I don't take care of the nutrition, and I don't have the proper fats and proteins, what am I doing to my body? I'm putting more stress on my metabolic system, right? So exercise is wonderful, and I would never tell somebody not to exercise, but I would also tell somebody exercise is a stress on the body that you have to balance with recovery. That is so important, and also nutrition, right? So there's a triad here when it comes to exercise. Exercise is not the base of it. Nutrition is the base of the triad, with recovery being the number one thing we have to look at. And then we look at the nutritional aspect, and we look at, the sleep and everything like that, because that forms the basis of recovery from exercise. That's one of the biggest misnomers, is that I'm going to go to the gym to lose weight. It doesn't work like that because most people go to the gym and they don't lose weight, right? They do the same thing over and over again. They don't lose weight, right? So we have to look at exercise as, yes, 100% beneficial. It lowers stress, improves cognition, improves heart health, lung health, muscular endurance, muscular strength. But in terms of body fat, it is very small percentage of how your body utilizes stored fat, right?
Well said. Yeah, I like that. Do you value strength training over what we call, quote unquote, like cardiovascular exercise for most people? Is there like a hierarchy there that you enjoy?
For me personally, a lot of it has shifted. I was a bodybuilder for X amount of years, and so like that was my life. I'd train at the gym, and be like chest one day, back the next day, shoulders next day, legs the next day, repeat, right? You know, there's a big, obviously huge benefit for muscle, right? One of the things we have to look at is how much muscle, right? Like, do we need to actually bodybuild to live longer? No, right? We need muscle, right? We don't need copious amounts, right? We need to be able to bend over and pick up things and lift things and that kind of stuff, right? As we age, strength training probably comes up in the biomarkers for me, right? Like when we're in 60, 70, we need to strength train. Do we need to bodybuild? Not necessarily, unless that's your thing, unless you love it, right? Fair enough. Cardiovascular, like I think you're probably going to agree with me here that the VO2 max is probably one of the big biomarkers for longevity, for how long you live, vitality. So cardiovascular is definitely marks higher for me in a few aspects, but they're pretty evenly matched, I think, for where I sit. I honestly think I wouldn't value one over the other. I think they're both they're both needed, but the other thing that's needed that doesn't get talked about a lot is mobility, stability, and or hips, like joint stability, like flexibility, like that. Those are the encompassing things that really get missed. Like how many people have a six pack but can't touch their toes, right? Like there's probably many people out there, right? Like mobility is something that really gets taken for granted as we get older. We need mobility. We need to be able to be mobile and flexible and move our bodies in different ways, right? So I've been learning a lot about that over the last year and a half, and that that's kind of taken me away from the bodybuilding scene and looked at more at like holistic strength training rather than like let's go and like pump up our biceps and like let's go like do chest presses all day long, right? I'm not like that anymore. Like I've completely changed my view on that.
Yeah, I like that. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you mentioned VO2 max. And I wish more people would bring this up that you can change your VO2 max by two major things. Like you can increase your cardiovascular capacity, but that VO2 max number is also based on your relative weight. If you weigh less, that number is the denominator that your VO2 is going to go up anyway. And so weighing, 180 pounds is probably better for you than weighing 400 pounds. And that alone will help, basically double your VO2 max
Yeah.
from wherever it
Oh,
is. So
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You
that's
don't have to
amazing.
be a massive endurance athlete to have a really good VO2 max, right? Like
Absolutely.
it's really relative body weight, making sure that you can obviously like do 20, 30 minutes of continuous exercise. Don't have to be like blasting out like an hour and a half of cardio every day. It's really that it's pretty simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, then I'm glad you brought that up. You chose to focus on your career on men over 40. What specific issues do you notice that a lot of men also have to face? We've talked about nutrition, we've talked about the exercise. I mean, I'm assuming you're working with people who are trying to be really successful at work. Maybe they're feeling disconnected or they're feeling lonely in different relationships, or they're very busy, they're very stressed. Like what other things are big, like, I don't know, like lifestyle things that you need to work on with your people that are outside of exercise and nutrition?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in my book, I talk about getting the body back into the whole, right? Because so many people have fragmented bodies, and what I mean by that is, they have identity issues. They don't feel good about their body. They have low self-confidence, low self-esteem. They're kind of like look in the mirror, like, how did I get like 40 pounds overweight? Like they're looking at their belly, like I'm not attractive. I don't feel good about myself. My sexual intimacy with my partner is down, right? So not that I'm, counselor and like doing all that stuff, but a lot of that is part of what I do, right? Like when I sit on a coaching meeting with people, we talk about nutrition for sure. We talk about exercise, but we also talk about what's going on in their life, right? Like I really want to know more about, what's really your struggle. Like if I'm talking to John, I'm like, John, like what is really going on in the last 2 weeks since we talked? Like, how are you and your wife getting along? Do you feel better about your relationship with your kids? Like, do you feel less stressed? Are you enjoying life more? Like, that's the kind of stuff, the nuance that is better to talk about than just, hey, like, let's talk about your meal plan. Let's talk about your meals. Because then you get into the nuances of people's lives, and that's where you make the biggest difference. Because then you can be like, okay, well, you know what I see? I see this pattern happening over and over again. Let's change it this way, or let's do that. Let's maybe do an exercise that can help you with that. Like, there's so many different ways that we can help our clients rather than talk about nutrition and exercise. Although that is a very important, subject, but there's so much more to our bodies and our brains than just food and eating, right? That's all mechanical stuff. Our bodies are spiritual. Our bodies, we have needs, we have, everything inside of us that, once we feel connected to our body, everything else becomes easier. That's what I mean by fragmented. Fragmented means you don't feel good about who you are as a person, and that physical body is part of it. Once we get the physical body back, then you start to actually feel better as a person. You feel more whole as a person, and you can perform better in a lot of different areas, whether that be business, career, sports, relationships, whatever it is, right? But it starts with becoming more whole rather than trying to fix little pieces of the body. My book is coming out. It's called Get Your Body Back. And in the cover of that book, it looks like a man that's fragmented, but as you look at it closer, he's coming together. And that is the goal, is to have somebody read my book and feel like you're fragmented, but at the end of the book, feel like you're whole again.
Amazing. Wow. I love that approach. I think that's wonderful. I wish more people knew that about people like us that are in the coaching business, that, yeah, we can set up an exercise for you and count to 10 and explain why we're doing this exercise and what the tempo should be and the rest and all of the other stuff and talk nutrition, but also that the coach is showing up to, be your counselor. Like you mentioned, I think we are counselors. You're
Yeah,
talking about things and getting to know people. And really, I think that's a really underrated part of the coaching
it is.
process.
It is. And that's kind of the reason why I left personal training. I love being a personal trainer, but I felt at the end of the day, I wasn't making a big difference. Like I was in a like a short-term 1 hour session, but I felt like I wasn't really like reaching my maximal potential to the client. They were paying me money. I was training them, taking them through, but I felt almost like I wasn't doing the client the best service that I could. And that's kind of why I felt disconnected with personal training. And I felt I needed to make a change because I was like, I don't feel like I'm making the biggest difference here. Yes, maybe for an hour I am, but for the rest of their time with me, I don't know. So that it made me question a lot of things.
Yeah, that's a cool aspect of your journey. And yeah, Trevor, this has been an amazing conversation. It's so fun, if nothing else, just to chat with somebody who's been in the industry for as long as you have. Not many people stick around in the industry that long, and you have, and have added so many different layers to your message, and especially focusing on men over 40 and metabolic improvements, I think is absolutely wonderful. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I really appreciate you and the journey you've been on and everything you've been able to share with us and our listeners today and our audience. So where would you
Perfect.
like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Yeah, the best way to do it is it's really simple website. It's rebuildyourmetabolism.com. So it's rebuildyourmetabolism.com. And what you're going to find there is a 15-day metabolic reset. And it's basically 15 days where you can go through and you can start to actually rebuild your metabolism. So you'll get me as a coach one-on-one. It's going to be really easy. We're going to text message back and forth. You're going to fill out some forms, metabolic signals, so we can understand where you're starting from. You're going to start in a 4x4 meal timing system, start eating 4 meals a day. So that's the first place. And then, of course, after that 15-day metabolic reset, I'll help you understand what to do next. And that's part of our journey together, where we go into the metabolic operating system, which is our flagship program here. And then we can go from there.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. We'll have that all linked up in the show notes so people can find that really easily. Trevor, like I said, this has been an amazing conversation. I hope you go and hit the ice so that we can have another conversation sometime down the road and talk about your journey playing hockey as a Canadian.
Sounds
But
good.
anyway,
That sounds like a great conversation.
it would be awesome. Dude, thank you so very much. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you and your work. And thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We really appreciate you.
Appreciate it, Casey. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah, you do the same. Thank you. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.